At 11:42 on a deadline night, Nadine Brooks opened a shipping carton and found a hairline crack in a child car seat. Your scanner flashed red. QA hold Lot 4C. The green inspected seal was already fixed to the side of the carton. Calvin Ross looked at the clock above the loading doors. The retailer truck had 8 minutes left. "Clear it under your number," he said. Nadine pushed the carton toward the hold lane. Not until quality sees it. By the next morning, Asterline Child Products had fired her for damaging the seat and delaying the shipment. 3 days later, a mother named Kendra Miles opened a delivery traced to that same truck. The seat inside had the same narrow crack. As Kendra turned the carton, the loose edge of the green seal caught against her thumb. It peeled away. Under it was a red label, QA hold Lot 4C. And beside the two labels was the exact carton number printed in Nadine's termination notice. 4C 11827. 3 nights before that seal lifted in Kendra's living room, Nadine had been standing at outbound lane 9 in Asterline's distribution center outside Atlanta. She had worked there for 7 years. At 39, she knew the difference between a slow night and a dangerous one. A slow night had broken tape dispensers, missing pallet sheets, and workers checking the clock every 4 minutes. A dangerous night looked efficient. Everyone moved quickly enough that no one wanted to be the person who stopped the line. That Thursday was the final shipping night before a major retailer promotion. Car seats in gray cartons moved along the conveyor beneath hard white lights. Forklifts sounded at crossing lanes. A digital board above dispatch counted down the remaining time for each trailer. Nadine wore a navy vest over a long-sleeved shirt. Her name was stitched in white above her chest pocket. A guarded safety cutter hung from a retractable cord at her waist. Her job was not to decide whether a child restraint met a federal standard. She was not an engineer or product tester. She scanned cartons. She checked visible damage. If a box was crushed, wet, open, or linked to a hold code, she moved it out of saleable flow and called quality. It was ordinary work until ordinary work required someone to say no. Nadine had placed products on hold before. Once a pallet had arrived with rainwater seeping through the lower cartons. Another time, the wrong instruction booklet had been packed with a row of seats. In both cases, the line paused, quality reviewed the units, and the warehouse moved again. No one received an award for catching those problems. No one was supposed to. The hold process existed because a packer could see one part of a product's journey while quality staff could see another. Nadine did not need to know the final answer before stopping a carton. She only needed to recognize when the answer was missing. That was why she trusted the red screen more than the pressure around it. At 11:42, one carton caught against the metal guide beside the conveyor. The box turned sideways and stopped the 2 cartons behind it. Nadine pressed the line pause and pulled the carton clear. There was a green inspected seal on the side panel. She had seen the same green stickers on other Lot 4C boxes that evening, though she had not worked the recheck table. The top tape had stretched where the carton struck the guide. Nadine scanned the outer barcode, then used the guarded cutter along the tape line. The blade barely entered the box. Inside, molded packaging held the gray child's seat several inches below the opening. She lifted the top insert. The crack was not dramatic. It did not split the seat in half. It was a narrow separation beside one of the molded ribs in the outer shell, thin enough that someone moving quickly could call it a scratch. Nadine ran one gloved finger near it without pressing. Then she checked the scanner. The screen had turned red. QA hold Lot 4C. She read it twice. Calvin Ross came from dispatch before she called him. He had been watching the stopped conveyor from the raised desk near the loading doors. Calvin was 44, black, and careful about how he carried pressure. He did not shout across the floor. He lowered his voice and made the person in front of him feel as if the entire warehouse was waiting on one answer. "Why is lane 9 stopped?" he asked. Nadine angled the open carton toward him. "There is a split in the shell. The scan is holding the lot." Calvin looked at the crack, then at the clock. 7 minutes remained. "That is surface marking," he said. The carton caught the rail. "Separation is behind the top insert, and the box has already been inspected." He tapped the green seal with 2 fingers. Nadine held up the scanner. "The screen still says hold." Calvin glanced toward the trailer. Missing the cutoff could bring a chargeback large enough to erase the profit on the shipment. Asterline was also trying to keep preferred status with the retailer, and Calvin had been told that this quarter would decide whether he moved into a regional operations role. He had not designed the car seat. He had not caused the crack. He believed the lot would eventually be cleared. But belief was not the same as a release. "Quality is not staffed on this side after 11:30, he said. "The rework is complete. Clear the exception and put it back." Nadine looked at the red screen. "Quality has to clear a quality hold. I am giving you a direct instruction. Again, put it under your number." The words were quiet. That made them harder to pretend he had not heard. Calvin's expression changed. "Are you refusing to complete the order?" "I am refusing to release this carton. You opened it, and now you are saying you found damage." Nadine looked at the protected space between the taped opening and the shell. "My cutter did not reach that seat. You cannot prove when that mark happened. That is why it needs quality review." 5 minutes remained. Workers on the nearby lanes kept moving, but their attention had shifted. Nobody stared directly at Nadine and Calvin. In a warehouse, people learned how to hear an argument without turning their heads. Nadine closed the top flaps without retaping them. She printed the hold routing slip and pushed the carton into the red-marked lane beside the quality cage. Calvin stepped between her and the conveyor. "Badge out," he said. A second. She thought he meant she should clock out at the end of the shift. Then he held out his hand. "You are being removed pending review. Give security your badge at the exit." Nadine felt every person near lane 9 become quieter. "For following the screen?" "For damaging product, stopping dispatch, and refusing instruction. Human resources can sort out which part matters most." She unclipped her scanner from her belt and set it on the work table. She did not argue with security. She did not take a photograph of the system or slip a shipping document into her vest. She looked once at the carton in the hold lane. The green seal remained on its side. Then she walked toward the employee exit. After Nadine's badge registered at the door, Calvin returned to the dispatch station. Earlier that evening, temporary workers at the rework table had visually checked 48 Lot 4C cartons for crushed corners and torn tape. Green seals had been pressed over the red labels on the side panels. The cartons were already staged for the deadline truck. The paper warnings were hidden, but the electronic quality hold remained active. Calvin opened the batch exception screen with his operations credential. A warning line appeared beside Lot 4C. "Quality disposition pending." He selected all 48 cartons assigned to the shipment and changed their outbound status. Then he walked to the hold lane, took Nadine's open carton by its handles, and rolled it back toward the pallet. At 11:50, the trailer doors closed. The truck left with A4C 11827 inside. Nadine reached home shortly after 1 in the morning. The apartment was dark except for the light over the stove. Her 16-year-old son, Micah, had fallen asleep at the kitchen table beside an open geometry book. a school transportation notice sat under his elbow. Beside it was a payment reminder for an exam preparation course Nadine had promised they would manage before the end of the month. She moved the papers away from his arm and woke him gently. "You are home early," he said. There was a disagreement at work. Micah looked at her without asking the question he was old enough to understand. "Are you going back tomorrow?" "They have to review it first." She said it with enough confidence that he carried his book to bed. Nadine remained at the table. She wrote the time on the back of an unopened envelope. 1142, Lot 4C. She did not know the carton number yet. She only knew the screen had said hold. Calvin had told her to erase that meaning, and her badge was no longer in her pocket. At 8:13 the next morning, Asterline Human Resources called. The representative read from Calvin's incident report. Nadine had damaged saleable merchandise while opening a carton. She had halted a critical shipment. She had refused a direct operational instruction and disrupted dispatch. Was the quality hold included in his report? Nadine asked. There was a pause at the other end. The report says the carton had completed visual rework. That is not what I asked. The termination decision has been made. You may submit an internal appeal. The email arrived before the call ended. Nadine opened the attached notice at the same kitchen table where Micah had studied. It gave the incident time as 11:42. It identified the product by an internal carton number, 4C 11827. That was the event, Asterline said, proved she had damaged its product. It was also the first record she could use to identify what she had stopped. Nadine filed the appeal before noon. She did not claim the entire lot was defective. She wrote that she had seen a visible separation, received an active quality hold response, moved the carton to the marked lane, and refused to clear it under her employee number. She asked Asterline to preserve the scan event, the dispatch audit, and the fixed camera covering lane 9. The first response came that afternoon. The company had reviewed the manager's account and found no basis to delay the termination. Nadine printed the response because a paper refusal felt harder to lose than one on a screen. The wording followed her into every application she opened. One staffing portal asked whether she had ever been terminated for damaging employer property. A warehouse recruiter told her a 7-year work history was valuable, then asked for written resolution of the safety incident before placing her with a child products account. Nadine could explain the red hold in a conversation. She could not control what Asterline's verification system said after the conversation ended. That was the second injury in Calvin's report. It had taken her wages first. Then it had tried to turn the decision she was proudest of into a warning attached to her name. She placed it beneath Micah's transportation notice. That evening she opened the household budget and crossed out everything that could wait. A streaming subscription, new work shoes, the better brand of laundry soap. She stopped at the exam preparation fee. The next morning, the line was gone. Ika had erased it himself. Nadine found him tying his shoes beside the front door. "Put the course back on the calendar," she said. "I can use free videos. You can use those too. Put it back." "Mom, you do not know how long the appeal will take." Nadine looked at the printed termination notice on the table. "A wrong record does not get to charge you first." Micah studied her face, then wrote the payment date back onto the calendar. Time. On the third day, while Nadine was sitting in the parking lot outside another warehouse after a job interview, Kendra Miles opened the Asterline carton in her living room. Kendra was 31 and had ordered the gray seat for her toddler. The child was spending the afternoon with Kendra's sister, so the apartment was quiet, except for the scrape of cardboard against the floor. Kendra checked the model and manufacturer label on the seat, then lifted it from the molded packaging. She saw the separation before she removed the instruction packet. It ran beside a shell rib near the lower side. Not a loose thread, not a mark on fabric, a narrow opening in the molded shell. Kendra set the seat back into the carton. She did not install it. She did not place her child inside to see whether the crack changed under weight. She took out her phone. The retailer's return page asked for the order number and a photograph of the damage. Kendra turned the carton to find the shipping information. The edge of the green inspected seal had lifted slightly from the side panel. When she steadied the box, it caught against her thumb. The seal peeled halfway away. Red appeared beneath it. Kendra stopped moving. She lifted the green label, only far enough to read the one below. QA hold Lot 4C. She took a photograph before touching anything else. Then she photographed the delivery label, the internal carton number, the model and manufacture date on the seat, the crack, and the two labels together. When she called the retailer, she did not say the company had recalled the product. She said exactly what she knew. The seat arrived cracked, and an inspected sticker is covering a hold label. My child has not used it. The customer service agent transferred the report to product compliance. Aaron asked Kendra to leave the seat uninstalled, keep the original carton, and upload the photographs through the retailer's return case. He repeated her order number, the visible carton identifier, and the model and manufacture date so she could correct any mistake. "Do I need to test whether the crack moves?" Kendra asked. "No," Aaron said. "Do not put weight on it. What you have already documented is enough for us to hold the return and contact the supplier." Kendra set the carton against the living room wall, out of her child's reach. She did not know what the red label would eventually prove. She only knew that something marked hold had been delivered as ready. That was how Aaron Bell first saw Kendra's photographs. Aaron managed product compliance cases for the retailer's regional distribution network. He had authority to stop the retailer from selling inventory while a supplier answered questions. He did not have authority to declare a federal recall. He placed Kendra's return into the retailer's documented safety hold and opened a supplier case with Asterline. The subject line contained the carton number, 4C 11827. At Asterline, the report reached Priya Shah. Priya was the quality engineer responsible for the Lot 4C hold. She opened the first photograph, enlarged the red label beneath the green one, and sat still for several seconds. "That lot was never released," she said. The person beside her asked whether the red label might be old. Priya opened the quality system. The hold was still active. 2 earlier ShellFlex complaints were waiting for review. No quality user had entered a disposition. No test sign-off existed. No release time appeared. Yet Kendra had a Lot 4C seat in her home. Priya called Aaron before she called anyone in dispatch. They began with records they were authorized to see. Kendra's order led to a retailer fulfillment event. That event led to a receiving record. The receiving record pointed to an Asterline manifest. The manifest pointed to a pallet position on the deadline shipment. The Asterline pick record showed a late status change under Calvin's operations. Credential. The earliest exception on that carton appeared at 11:42 under Nadine Brooks. Hold requested. The 5 records described one continuous journey. The carton had not been repacked. It had not entered a loose return bin or been exchanged with another seat. The same internal number remained attached from Asterline's lane to Kendra's door. Priya searched the unit number in Asterline's product incident system. A cross-reference showed that the same carton was named in an open employment incident. Priya called Human Resources instead of opening the personnel file herself. The employee had been fired for damaging that exact seat. Priya stood and closed the review room door. She requested immediate preservation of the raw scan audit, dispatched messages, Lot 4C quality file, PIC records, and camera footage from 9:15 through trailer close. Then she called Human Resources. Nadine's phone rang as she sat in her car after the interview. The hiring manager inside had been polite. He had asked why she left Asterline after 7 years. When Nadine said the termination involved an alleged product damage incident under appeal, he had placed his pen beside her application. "We will need that record resolved," he said. Now an Asterline Human Resources reviewer was asking whether Nadine could join a new appeal call the next morning. "Has someone looked at the scan?" she asked. "The product report matched the unit in your notice. We are preserving the relevant records." "What product report?" "I cannot disclose customer information. I can tell you the carton has been located." He didn't call. Nadine looked through the windshield at workers entering the building where she had just interviewed. Was it still on hold? The reviewer paused. "That is part of what we are examining." It was not an apology. He didn't call, but it was the first time anyone at Asterline had answered her, as if the red screen might have been real. Nadine stayed in the parked car after the call ended. On the passenger seat lay a blank employment form and the folder containing her appeal. For 3 days, Asterline had treated the carton as if it existed only in Calvin's report. Now someone outside the warehouse had found it without knowing Nadine, her appeal, or what she needed the truth to say. She did not know whether that would restore her job. It did mean the evidence no longer depended on her memory alone. The next evidence came from Marisol Vega. Eden Tess. Marisol had worked the temporary recheck table that night. She was 28 and depended on weekly placements from a staffing agency. When Asterline asked her to attend an interview, she arrived with her phone in one hand and the fear that every answer might remove her from the next schedule. Priya did not ask Marisol whether the seats were safe. She asked who assigned the work and what the team had been told. "Yeah?" Before Marisol answered, she asked whether the rework workers were being accused of releasing defective products. Priya shook her head. "I am trying to separate the task you were given from the authority someone attached to it. Tell me only what you received and what you did." Marisol's shoulders lowered slightly. Temporary workers were often close enough to a decision to carry its blame and too far from it to see the records behind it. She unlocked her phone. Marisol opened the shift message she had received at 9:18. Got 4C Lane 9. Visual packaging recheck. Apply green inspected seals before outbound. Do not delay trailer. Calvin Ross. The message was still in the company dispatch thread. Marisol had not edited or forwarded it to herself. "What did visual recheck mean at your table?" Priya asked. "Crushed corners, torn tape, watermarks, anything outside." "Did you inspect the shelves?" "No, we were not opening every carton." "Yeah. What were you told about the red labels?" "Eid." Marisol looked toward the human resources representative in the room. "Calvin said they were old. He said quality would update the system after we finished." "Did you see a quality release?" "I would not know where to see one." That answer mattered. Marisol had not pretended to hold authority she did not have. She had performed the task given to her from about 9:25 until 11:30. 48 cartons passed the table. Workers checked the outside, pressed green seals onto the side panels, and staged the boxes for the trailer. The green seal meant visual packaging had been checked. Calvin had allowed it to look like much more. "Yeah." Ask security to play the preserved footage. The ceiling camera could not read the small unit number. It could not show the crack inside the box. It could show time, color, movement, and position. At 9:27, Marisol's team began working through Lot 4C. Red labels were visible on the side panels. Green seals were pressed over the same locations, leaving small red corners visible on some cartons. At 11:42, a carton stopped at lane 9. The camera showed Nadine move it from the conveyor to her table. She opened it, looked inside, checked the scanner, and rolled it into the marked hold lane. It showed Calvin facing her. It showed Nadine remove her scanner and walk toward the exit. 4 minutes later, Calvin entered the hold lane and pulled the same carton back out. Yet the carton returned to the open position on the pallet shown in the pick map. Calvin scanned at dispatch. A second camera showed the pallet entering the trailer before the doors closed. No one could reasonably call it an accidental mix after that. The footage showed what moved. The raw system audit showed what kind of authority moved it. Priya placed the audit on one screen and the quality file on another. The difference was simple enough to explain without a manual. Operation fix a shipping exception. Quality had to decide what happened to a quality hold. Nadine's scan appeared first, active hold. Lot 4C quality review required. No quality credential appeared after it. Instead, Calvin's operations credential opened a batch exception across 48 cartons. Their outbound status changed. The quality disposition field remained empty. His incident report created another contradiction. Calvin had written that the scanner was functioning normally when Nadine refused his instruction. He could not now claim he had used the batch exception to correct a frozen or broken system. Priya opened the Lot 4C file. The earlier complaints did not prove every seat was defective. One described unusual shell movement during inspection. Another included a customer photograph of a narrow line near the same molded region. That was why Priya had issued a temporary hold. The file contained no release, no disposition, and no test result, clearing the lot before the truck left. By then, Aaron had completed the retailer trace. 37 of the 48 cartons remained inside retailer-controlled inventory. 11 had already left fulfillment. Kendra's was one of them. Aaron placed the 37 units under stop sale and quarantine. They could not be picked for new orders. The retailer contacted the 11 purchasers with return guidance, while Asterline reviewed the technical scope. There were no injury reports. Several customers had not opened their cartons. One had opened the box but had not installed the seat. Not every returned unit showed a visible crack. The story did not need an injured child to make the failure serious. 48 held products had entered saleable flow because one manager decided a deadline could stand in for a missing decision. Kendra received approval for an immediate replacement. She kept the damaged seat and original carton in the return process exactly as instructed. She did not call Nadine. She did not know Nadine's name. She only added one sentence to her report. Whoever stopped this carton before it shipped was right to stop it. Asterline interviewed Calvin that afternoon. He did not deny using the batch exception. The rework was complete, he said. I believed quality was going to clear the lot. We were minutes from missing the truck. Priya asked, "Where is the quality release you relied on?" Calvin looked at the empty disposition field. It had not posted yet. Because it did not exist. He shifted to the part of his report he could still defend. That does not change how the seat was damaged. Nadine opened the carton. She found a crack after she used a cutter. It was a narrower claim than the first one. First, Nadine had damaged product and refused a valid release. Then the red label was old. Then the operations exception was necessary. Now only one question remained between Nadine and a clean record. Had her cutter caused the crack? Priya selected unopened Lot 4C units that had remained at Asterline under hold. Her team recorded the model, manufacture date, lot association, carton condition, and seal status before opening anything. Nadine was not invited into the lab area. She did not stand beside the engineers or tell them where to look. She waited at home for the appeal meeting. The first retained carton was opened under observation. Its seat appeared intact. Priya examined the shell beside the molded rib and found no separation. That mattered too. A review that found only what it expected would answer less than it seemed. The second carton was documented and opened. The seat looked normal under the overhead light. Then Priya turned it slightly. A fine line appeared beside the same shell rib. She photographed it without pressing the material. On another unopened unit, the separation was clearer. Same molded region, same direction, packaging intact above it. The condition repeated within Lot 4C. Hefia then examined Kendra's returned seat and carton. Nadine's guarded cutter had traveled along the taped top. The inner insert beneath that line showed no penetration. There was no cut path through the packaging and no matching edge mark, leading to the shell separation. The crack sat lower and farther inside. Priya did not announce that the seat had failed a federal crash test. No such test had been performed in that room. She documented a repeated shell condition in multiple unopened units and concluded that the physical evidence did not support Calvin's accusation against Nadine. The technical finding moved to Asterline's safety team for a wider analysis. The employment evidence moved to human resources. Those two paths were connected, but they did not need to finish on the same day. Nadine arrived for the appeal review wearing the same navy shirt she had worn to her job interview. Her Asterline vest and badge were still inside the building. She sat at one end of a conference table with a printed copy of her termination notice in front of her. Calvin sat across from her. Priya sat beside a human resources director. Aaron's authenticated retailer trace and Kendra's return record were included through the supplier case. The retailer did not participate in Asterline's employment decision. The human resources director asked Nadine to describe the night again. She kept it narrow. The carton caught the guide. I opened the taped top under visible damage procedure. I saw a separation in the shell. The scanner showed an active Lot 4C hold. I moved the carton to the hold lane and asked for quality. I would not clear it under my login. Did you say the whole lot was defective? No. I said that carton was damaged and the system said hold. Did you contact a customer or remove company records? He did no. Did you authorize the truck to leave? Nadine looked across the table. He didn't call. Priya explained the quality file. The hold remained active. No quality release existed. The green seal represented an outer packaging task, not an engineering disposition. The audit showed Nadine's hold event and Calvin's later batch exception. The footage showed Nadine place the carton in the correct lane and Calvin return it to the pallet. Marisol's message showed who ordered the green seals and what the temporary team had been told. Kendra's photographs and the commercial records showed the exact carton arriving at her home. The retained units showed the same condition without Nadine ever touching them. Human Resources Director turned to Calvin. Your report states that Ms. Brooks damaged the seat and disrupted a valid release. What was the basis for that statement? Calvin looked at the papers in front of him. I believed the crack occurred during opening. I believed the hold was going to clear. But it had not cleared. No. And you used an operations exception across 48 held cartons. Yes. There was no confession about wanting a child harmed. Calvin had not wanted that. He had wanted the truck to leave, the chargeback to disappear, and his performance record to remain clean. He had convinced himself that the missing quality decision would arrive later and make his choice look reasonable. It did not. The Human Resources Director closed Calvin's incident report. Asterline is rescinding Ms. Brooks's termination effective immediately. Nadine did not move. The director continued. The product tampering allegation would be removed from her file. The company would issue a written correction. Her seniority would be restored. Lost wages from the termination period would be paid. She would be offered her outbound position and a paid training path in quality control. Calvin would be removed from outbound release authority, while formal discipline and the systems review continued. He didn't call. The temporary rework workers would not be blamed for performing the visual task they had been assigned without access to quality information. Nadine looked at the new letter placed beside the old one. The termination notice was 3 pages. The correction was 1. She read every line anyway. "Will the new record go to employment verification?" she asked. "Yes," the human resources director said. "The damage allegation will not remain." Nadine nodded once. "What happens to the seats?" It was the first question she asked after getting her job back. Priya answered. "Your retailer-controlled units are stopped. The delivered units are being contacted. Our safety review is defining the affected population now." Nadine folded the correction letter along its existing crease. She did not thank Asterline for returning what its own records showed it should not have taken. She thanked Priya for reading the hold file. He didn't. At home that evening, Micah found the written correction beside the school calendar. He read the line restoring Nadine's employment status, then looked toward the exam preparation payment date he had erased and rewritten. "So you are going back?" he asked. "After they correct the badge and the record. To the same lane. For now." They offered training with quality. "Yappy." Micah smiled for the first time since the termination call. "You already passed the hard part." Nadine looked at the correction letter. "The hard part should not have been mine." She placed the letter in the same folder as his course receipt, because some corrections mattered most in the ordinary things they allowed a family to keep doing. The product review continued over the following weeks. Asterline traced the affected seats through their model, manufacture dates, and Lot 4C production records. The 48 cartons Calvin released that night were part of the failure. But they were not the only question. Other Lot 4C seats had left the manufacturer before Priya opened the temporary hold. The safety team reviewed the earlier complaints, the returned units, the retained seat observations, production records, and the risk associated with a repeated separation in the shell. Then, Asterline made a safety-related defect determination for the affected model and manufacture date population. He didn't call. Within the required period after that determination, the company filed its report with the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and initiated a voluntary recall. The public notice did not mention A4C 11827 as if every owner knew a warehouse carton code. It identified the child restraint model and manufacture dates consumers could find on the permanent label. Registered owners began receiving notices. The retailer continued contacting purchasers in its own order system. Affected customers were offered a replacement or refund. The agency monitored the recall process. No federal agent appeared at Lane 9. No government official walked into Nadine's employment meeting or told Asterline how to apologize to her. He didn't call. The practical work belonged to the manufacturer that had made the product and the records it had nearly ignored. Kendra received a replacement seat. Before using it, she checked the model label, registered it with the manufacturer, and read the installation instructions. With her consent, Asterline added one sentence from her report to Nadine's corrected employment file. The worker who stopped this carton did exactly what a parent needed her to do. The sentence did not give Nadine more money. It gave the original act its proper name. Not delay. not insubordination. Protection. Asterline also changed the warehouse permission system. An operations manager could still resolve ordinary dispatch problems. A quality-held carton could no longer return to saleable flow through an operations batch exception. The screen required a separate quality credential and a written disposition. Until both existed, the printer would not produce a green release label. The change was smaller than a speech and more useful than one. Several weeks after the night security took her badge, Nadine returned to Lane 9 for the first shift of her paid quality training. She wore a new badge with her original start date restored. Priya stood beside her at the corrected scanner. On the table between them was a practice carton linked to a training hold. Nadine scanned it. The screen turned red. Hold. Quality disposition required. Priya asked, "What happens next?" Nadine looked toward the printer. Nothing came out. "You wait for the record to be complete," she said. Priya entered the training disposition with her separate credential. The screen changed. Only then did the printer produce a green label. Nadine lifted it from the tray and placed it on the practice carton. Around them, the warehouse continued to move. Forklifts crossed the lanes, scanners chimed. The dispatch clock counted toward another deadline. The work had not become easy. Nadine had not become rich. Calvin's pressure had not vanished from every warehouse simply because one system changed. But her name was clean. Her wages had been restored. Micah's course was paid. 37 seats had been stopped before leaving the retailer. 11 families had been contacted. A wider group of owners had a recall notice and a remedy because the manufacturer finally followed the evidence beyond one box. Nadine placed both hands on the practice carton and moved it back toward the line. This time, she was not releasing it because a manager told her to hurry. She was releasing it because the warning had been answered. The decision had been written down. And the system had finally earned her name.